people ask me, what have I learned from all these experiences? And it's important that one looks back at all the things that have happened and evaluate things. And I think the central key of it all has been the circumcision of the heart. Now, this is something that God revealed to me supernaturally, that I've never heard preached in any church in my life. And I've seen that the Bible is filled from Genesis to Revelation with references to the heart. One important thing that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 15 verse 8, he said, "This people honors me with their lips and their mouth, but their heart is far away from me." And I started to realize that our heart condition is what God looks at. With Samuel, when he went to anoint David as king, David's father brought all the other 7 children past him, and God said, not this one, not that one, not that one. Then God said to him, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. Before my farm was taken, God was dealing with that issue in me. I realized I've been asked to be a minister and help ministering to other people, but I looked at my own heart and I realized my own heart isn't where it should be. And nobody else sees that. Only God sees my heart. And I remember the story of King David when he sinned before God, and he cried out to God in Psalm 51. He said, change my heart, O God. Change my heart. That's something that God does, and he uses circumstances and all sorts of things. And then I came to the understanding, the Bible speaks a little bit about the circumcision of the heart, different things. And I asked the question, what is the circumcision of the heart? What does it mean? I've never had anybody explain that to me. And so I've learned that if you don't understand something, you go back to the foundation, and the foundation is in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, the children of Israel were circumcised. The little boys were circumcised on the 8th day. And what happened there was a little piece of skin was cut off from the most sensitive part of the male organ, and that piece of skin is called the flesh. And so the circumcision of the heart from a spiritual point of view is when the flesh, or the ruling of the fleshly, the worldly lusts of the flesh and earthly things, desires and so on, where that is cut off. And that's always a painful operation. And I realized that really speaks about who is king. The Bible speaks a lot about hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit. If you read through the Bible, right through from beginning to end, you read so many times, and God said, and God said. Jesus spoke in the Gospel of John. He said there in chapter 10 verse 27, he says, my sheep hear my voice. And I've often asked in churches and Christian groups, how many of you regularly hear the voice of God? And if people are honest, they will say, actually, I don't. I never hear the voice of God. Does God speak to us? I said, well, the Bible's full of that. In the book of Revelation, chapter 2 and chapter 3, there's 7 messages to the 7 churches, and each of them ends with these words, same words. He who has ears to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the church. And I'd say to myself, well, what is it that stops us from hearing? It's the flesh that covers the heart. Because all that we hear is the loud shouting of the lusts and desires of the flesh, and we can't hear the voice of God because the worldly things are calling us so loudly that it blocks the voice of God out. And effectively it means that we need a new king in our lives. The flesh must be cut off, and Jesus must be made king, so that we can hear his voice. And he tells us what to do. So when you connect all these things and the whole land issue, you come exactly with the same thing. Who does the land belong to? Does it belong to the whites, the blacks, the whoever? No, it doesn't. It belongs to the king. And we are only stewards. We are here to serve. We are here to do the will of God. We are here to hear his voice and be guided by him. And folks, the thing that concerns me the most in ministry, and we've ministered in many churches, is that we have so much religion and so little relationship with Jesus. And the Bible tells the story of a man by the name of Saul. He was probably the most learned at the best Bible college in his day under Gamaliel. The Bible speaks about. He was taught. He probably could have quoted the whole of the Old Testament. He was very, very well learned. And he was eager for the things of the law and so on, and persecuting the Christians. And he came on the road to Damascus. He was met with Jesus. Jesus met him, a light shone around him, and he fell on the ground. And Jesus said to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? You remember, this is a very, very, very religious man. Saul answers him, very significant question. Who are you, Lord? In all his religion, he'd never met Jesus. And so we understand what Jesus says, this people serves me with their lips and their mouth, but their heart is far from me. Because their heart is covered with the lusts and desires of the world. And if we are to have any change in our country, it starts here in my own heart, in your own heart. Who is king? I ask that question. Who is king in your life? Is it the world, or is it Jesus through the working of the Holy Spirit? Thank you. So, having discussed the story and the circumcision of the heart, I came to realize something with a shock, that most church people don't have any knowledge of the scriptures. The Bible through which they should give guidance and what to do and so on, they don't know the Bible. And so I decided that I'll do what I can to teach people the important principles of the Bible. I set up a website. I've done many teachings by video, by a podcast. I've written a whole lot of books. I've done articles and Bible studies written out that I've put on my website. And I do that as a service to the world, to just help them to get to know their Bibles and to get to know this Jesus as King. And I deal with it in many different subjects, themes. One of the books, the first book I wrote was Another Farm in Africa, which is our story. And then Embrace the Wilderness, which with our travels, we found that there are many people that are traumatized, many people going through very difficult circumstances and not knowing what to do, the question of the land reform and all the political things, and marriages that are breaking up, and many problems. And I realized there's a wilderness that people are living in. It's a wilderness of dryness, and they don't know what to do. It's so hard in the wilderness. And the book I wrote was Embrace the Wilderness, because it's in the wilderness that you see in the scriptures. It speaks often, God spoke words of kindness to them in the wilderness. It's when we go through the wilderness and we say, God, what are you saying to me in this wilderness experience that I'm having? What must I do? Because it's me that he's speaking to, you that he's speaking to. So embrace the wilderness is, how do I embrace the wilderness? We don't want to run away from the situation. We want to run to it and say, teach me in this wilderness. Help me to understand. I've written books about the Holy Spirit. How do I hear the voice of the Spirit? How can I be guided by the Spirit? A book about Bible-based business. How do I do business according to the scriptures? And many such books. So all of those studies and material is available on my website.